All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I will call to order this meeting of the City of Bloomington Plan Commission for November 9th, 2020. We have several items on the agenda this evening, including one item on a consent agenda and two petitions. Why don't we begin by calling the roll?
Sorry, I forgot I was going to be doing that tonight. Just a second.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, wait a minute. Okay.
Multitasking tonight.
Yeah. Kenzie.
Present.
Sandberg.
Yes.
St. John.
Here.
Cockrum.
Here.
Whistler.
Here.
Copper.
Here.
Burrell.
Here.
Oh, I see. Hold on just a second. We'll give him just a sec. We've done 7. I think Israel just joined. Just a second. Let me see if I can unmute him. We're doing roll. Herrera.
Here.
Great, thank you.
Your reservation has ended.
All right.
Thank you. We're
Looks
missing
like we
one.
have it.
Oh, Kate. Okay. Thank you so much. Sorry.
All right. So we do have 8 plan commissioners here, which is a quorum. So we will continue with our business. We don't have any minutes to be approved tonight. So before we get into our regular business, we'll start with some reports, resolutions, and communications. Do we have any reports from staff?
Sure. We just have one. We wanted to let you know, as is typical of the November meeting, we have our 2021 Development Review Committee schedule completed. So we will send that to you this week. It's not something that you have to approve, but it gives you the dates for our Plan Commission, Plat Committee, Board of Zoning Appeals, and Hearing Officer meetings for the next calendar year. That is helpful when you're deciding which committees you're going to sign up for in January, which slots you'd like to fill. We also, it's nice for us to have extra eyes if you see something that that maybe we missed, a date that should be changed or something like that. So we will send that to you this week for your reference, and it will also go up on the website for the public as well. And that's the only, only housekeeping we had. We also have 2 draft zoning map meetings this week. One is tomorrow night at 5:30, and we will be discussing those areas in town that were formerly or are plan unit developments and we're proposing to be rezoned to regular districts from the code. And on Thursday night at 5:30, we will be starting the discussion of the text amendments that would allow plexes in the primarily residential zoning districts. So just for anyone watching, that's when those will be discussed. And then there are 2 meetings the following week, plexes in R4 again on Monday, and then other smaller text amendments, corrections, and types of things like that on Tuesday. And then we will be done with that portion of the public outreach, but the website will stay live and active until this comes to Plan Commission in January. That's all I have. Thanks, Brad.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. And I would just add to the earlier point about next year's calendar and appointments. If you see anything on that calendar that interferes with your current appointments, or you think that there's another committee you'd like to serve on, now would be a good time to start giving that some thought, so we don't show up at our January meeting and have to do last minute dragging people into those appointments. It would be great if we could have a slate of candidates in advance of the January meeting this year. So any other reports or communications from plan commissioners? Okay. Seeing none, there's one petition that has been continued to our December 14th meeting. That is PUD 17-20, the McDole Business Center, LLC at 300 West Hillside Drive. So that is now set to be to have another hearing at the December meeting, but we will not be hearing that tonight. On our consent agenda tonight, we have just one item that is ZO-21-20. The petitioner is Comcast. The property is 1600 Fountain Drive. That's the request for a rezone of 7 acre property from residential medium lot to employment. We heard that at our last meeting. That's been added to the consent agenda because staff believes that that's either meeting the letter of the law or is otherwise non-controversial. Is there any commissioner that would like to see that particular item removed and receive another full hearing tonight? If so, say so now. Okay. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Just to remind everyone who may have been here before, or if you're here for the first time, if you'd like to make public comment at any point that we call for public comment, the best way to do that is to click on the participants button at the bottom of your screen. And once you click that, you should see a button at the bottom of that participants panel that says raise hand. And if you raise your hand there, then we will recognize you and give you 5 minutes to make comment on the item at hand. I don't see any hands raised currently, but we'll give it just a minute for people who may be trying to figure that out. And while we're doing that, perhaps, Jackie, we could check in on the Facebook feed. Did we ever get that?
We're
going?
looking at it. There's actually a competing meeting happening right now that I guess is a reschedule. I'm not sure. Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission is streaming. So since ours airs on CATS, we went ahead and let that keep going there, and then we can share the recording after. Sure.
All right. Well, I don't see any other hands raised. If for some reason you have trouble with the virtual hand raise, the other thing you might do is turn your camera on and just wave your actual hand, and we'll try to keep an eye out for that as well. But it looks like there is no public comment, so we'll just come back to the commission for a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Jackie, would you call the roll on the consent agenda, please?
Sure. St. John,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Copper,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Kenzie,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
8-0.
All right, so the consent agenda passes 8-0. We're moving on now to our petitions. We have 2 petitions tonight. Those are ZO-23-20, Bill C. Brown Revocable Trust, property at 31 West Fullerton Pike. And the second is SPDP 2420, Habitat for Humanity at 700 West Guy Avenue. We'll start with ZO-2320. Again, this is 3100 West Fullerton Pike, a request for rezone of 87 acres from PUD to mixed-use corridor. And the case manager for this petition is Eric Grulich, who I believe is here to present. Eric, are you with us? We have your screen, but I'm not hearing your voice.
I apologize about that. So this is a petition for Bill Brown for a property that he owns at 3100 West Fullerton Pike. This property is about 87 acres in size and is actually located on pretty much the most southern tip of the city boundary, the northeast corner of I-69 and Fullerton Pike. So the petition site is zoned as a planned unit development. It was initially rezoned back in the 1980s, the late 80s. There have been a couple of amendments and requests for some site plans and development on this property, but nothing has happened on the site. There was an approval that was done in 2015 to allow for the property to have some topsoil removed as part of the construction of I-69. But otherwise, like I said, it's remained vacant and undeveloped. So the petitioner is here tonight to request to rezone the property from the planned unit development zoning that it is currently to the mixed use corridor, the MC zoning district. So they have also requested a waiver from the required second hearing for this rezoning petition. So real just briefly as an overview for this area, as I mentioned, this is zoned to planned unit development. This is the far southernmost tip of our jurisdiction. Just to the north of this is the Southern Indiana Medical Park, both phase 1 and phase 2. As some plan commissioners may remember, there was a lot of discussion with Southern Indiana Medical Park and road connectivity through there. There is a road that is shown through here on the transportation plan that would have to be constructed whenever something happens on this site. But the petitioner has no immediate development plans, so there's no site plan approval that is coming forward with this. It's strictly a rezoning request in order to allow for some increased marketability for the site. So as I mentioned, the property is undeveloped. You can see in this aerial photograph here, there's a mix of trees and open space on the site. So the defined tree line that you can see on this aerial photograph reflects the approval that was given in 2015. So that approval set aside all the trees, the riparian buffer on the site. And so what you see is open space here is what was left after you took out those preservation boundaries. So the property, as I mentioned, was a planned unit development. It was approved in 1988 with the close to what was a manufacturing park zoning district at a time. So you can see on the screen here the use list that was associated with that. There was some limited retail that was allowed, office spaces allowed, some distribution, manufacturing, production, kind of a wide range of things. And again, this was done in the late 80s, so this was using the 1973 zoning code. So again, we have a lot of problems when we're trying to translate the uses that were in the code at that time with the uses that are on our list now. So this site has sat undeveloped, and this is on the areas or some of the areas of the planned unit developments that we were looking to kind of remove and rezone to a current zoning district. Again, for the lot of reasons I just mentioned, with the use list here that was so old, doesn't match our current uses. So it really does need to be changed and amended, and staff was proposing to address that with our draft zoning map. We had initially identified it as kind of a mixed use medium scale commercial property, just kind of based on the use list. But as we've gone through the PUD analysis, we've really tried to match things more diligently with the comprehensive plan and be consistent with all of the PUDs throughout the city in terms of comp plan designation and proposed zoning. So we were proposing to rezone this to the mixed use employment district. We're also looking at possibly amending the list of uses for the mixed use employment district, as well as the employment district itself. Maybe kind of sync those together, maybe add some additional ones. You know, like I said, we've just started that process. So there's still a lot of things that are in play that we're trying to figure out with the draft map, with possible text amendments. So as I mentioned, we're trying to be consistent in zoning of properties and following the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan has this site designated as employment. Within that area, it's highly encouraged, obviously, to have a lot of high employment uses, professional business offices, flexible tenant space, research and development centers. So certainly the large size of this property and the closeness to I-69 makes this an ideal location for those employment uses with the ease of access. So we're not sure really if commercial uses and high uses like that are what we want to see here, that are not consistent with our comprehensive plan. So we did make a recommendation in the staff report, and As I've kind of discussed here, we want to make sure that we're being consistent with the comprehensive plan, as well as other PUDs, and as well still continue to evaluate our use list and what is and is not allowed in each of these districts. So at this time, we are recommending that the petition be denied based on the lack of consistency with the comprehensive plan, and kind of where we are with our process of still very initially reviewing the zoning districts and the standards that go along with that. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Eric. Is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to make a presentation? Eric, is there a...
Sorry, Mike, I'm trying to unmute you. I assume it's Mike Carmen. He can
Yes,
tell us
Mike
if it's someone
Carmen is the
else.
petitioner's representative.
So, yeah, there you go, Mike.
Okay, there we go. All right. I thought I was raising my hand, but maybe I didn't do it right. Sorry. My name is Mike Carmen, representing Bill Brown, the petitioner. This PUD was, well, first of all, let me back up and say, in our petition, when filed, we requested waiver of second meeting. We're withdrawing that request for second meeting. We would like to turn this into a little bit more of a discussion feedback session, and we'll look at the petition further and be back next month. That's up to you. You have to make that decision. You have a staff recommendation to recommend denial and send it on to the council for final action, which is where it would go sooner or later. We'd ask that you not act on it tonight and essentially amounts to a continuous, but to the next meeting, and have a chance to make a few comments now and look for some questions or feedback from you that we can take a look at it between now and the next meeting. So this PUD goes, as Eric said, goes back to 1986. The staff recommendation for the ME zone and touting the employment uses that are in there, while understandable, the issue of I-69 and ease of access and being a place suitable for employment-based zoning has been true even when it was Highway 37. It was still, at the time, for Highway 37 as divided highway, was the most attractive access road you had. The fact is now I-69 doesn't really change anything. It's 69 instead of 37, but that issue of this site being zoned for looking for employment-based uses as a good site for that has been true since 1986, and actually even before then. But and Eric's told you nothing is happening with the site. Bill's been doing this for a number of years. He's been doing this for longer than I would think some members have probably been alive, but 36 years at this site, and nothing has been able to do anything with it yet. And then we're in the time where we're looking for some flexibility. The ME zone does not provide the flexibility. If you look at the table uses, and one of the reasons I'm looking for some feedback is if you look at the table of permitted uses in the ME zone and compare it with the MC zone, which is what we're requesting, almost everything that's permitted in the ME zone is also permitted in the MC. You're losing very little. Wind farms was one that's not permitted in the MC zone, that would be in the ME, and light manufacturing. But the light manufacturing, if you look at the PUD uses that Eric had flashed up there a few moments ago, and I know they're in the packet in your staff report, those light manufacturing uses have been there available on this site for 36 years, and it has not generated somebody willing to take a piece of it and develop for that use yet. Why we're pushing now for the MC zone as opposed to just wait and let this play out with the staff handling through maybe a bigger picture, look at a lot of PUDs. There are a number of reasons, one of which is it's hard to market uncertainty. There's that, we'd like to eliminate that. There has been some inquiry, some interest in a use that is not far enough along and not mature enough to really want to talk about it much, but it would take a big chunk of this that would need, as part of that use, I'm going to call it a training center or a safety regional training safety center, but that use would depend upon having close at hand, in close proximity, a hotel and a restaurant, which become problematic in the ME zone, a little bit more problematic in the ME zone. Very limited restaurant seating use, the limited size. but the very large use that could take as much as 25 acres for a large center needs the assurance that it could co-develop with it, a hotel and a restaurant, because the nature of the center and the traffic that it bring in. So there's that. A prior PUD amendment added to the list of permitted uses an assisted living center. We don't want to lose that. That's not a permitted use in the ME zone. It is in the MC zone. So there are some things in the MC zone that we do not want to lose, that going from the PUD to any other zone is at risk, as well as the MC zone adds some flexibility. And so one of the reasons I'm looking for some feedback is I don't know how much of a concern the issue of retail is. Some retail in that area I would hope would not be a concern, but there remains the possibility of what's called a zoning commitment. It goes by a couple different names, where certain permitted uses are otherwise excluded. I know staff is not overly enthralled with that concept. It's available under the law and is actually used frequently, and as has been used a number of times in some of the petitions you've seen and that have gone on to the council. But it's an opportunity to do what amounts to a deed restriction that says among whatever uses are permitted, the following will not be permitted. If big box retail is a concern, that can actually be safely eliminated as a deed restriction. And this kind of a step is, as I said, is done frequently. Has been done in the city, done it out in the county a number of times, and the statute on zoning actually specifies this as a process, as a possibility. I guess some of the other issues that we talk about, I mean, this is a large tract, as Jerry said. We've looked and explored the concept of a split zone, a single lot that is divided at some point where you have two zones of lot. Maybe the south half is MC and the north half is ME. I can tell you that the staff is not supportive of that. It's not a legal problem. It's a staff planning preference. I mean, but frankly, it's no different than if we do a two-lot subdivision, and not much different than if we do a two-lot subdivision and divide the parcel from 87 plus acres and two 40-acre parcels, and look at one zone on one zone on the other 40 acres, and preserve some of the area for ME use if that's a strong desire for you. But that could also be done on simply a amended petition that calls for a split zoning on it, designate a certain part of it for MC and a certain part of it for ME, which is another reason for asking to have what amounts to a conversation here. And I would like to have some questions and some feedback for what are some of these issues that are important to you as the Plan Commission. As I said, the MC preserves almost every ME use, but it certainly allows for some other uses that gives us some flexibility, some of which we think is going to be necessary for one potential buyer and developer. Not certain, but it certainly is out there as an opportunity that we're still looking at and pursuing. But just generally some flexibility for vacant land that's been dormant for a very long time, and it's time to get some movement out there. And so the MC zone, we believe, would certainly allow that. So those are comments for now, but I would renew the request to the notice that we would like to withdraw the request for a waiver second meeting and look to have you continue this to the next meeting or next month for further discussion. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll come back to the commission for questions. Are there any questions for either staff or for the petitioner from commissioners? I see Commissioner Kinsey.
Eric or Jackie, I don't know who can speak to the timeline for the proposed rezone. What is the approximate schedule for that?
I mean, for the map amendment?
Yes.
Or the new map, I'm sorry, in the text amendments. The idea is that that will come to you in January, hopefully, second half of January. And we will do special sessions so as not to disrupt regular business. So sorry that you'll be seeing us even more. And we expect for that to be wrapping up, we hope, before the end of February. So then it would go on to council in March and be done before summer session, which Susan can say when that is. I'm not exactly sure if that's always set, but the idea would be to do it in spring, early summer.
So within the next 6-7 months,
yep,
this should be resolved via the processes that have been established.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Karen.
Thanks, Mr. Carmen, for that presentation. Appreciated that. I'm curious, Jackie or Eric, what your thinking is about Mr. Carmen's willingness, his proposal to hear from staff and the Plan Commission on uses that we could prohibit. I mean, what do you think about that whole process? That's one question. And the second question is, can you refresh our memory on why that parcel is the ME and not MC?
Sure, I can let Eric can answer the second part, I think. I'll just chime in at the beginning about the zoning commitment. So obviously, of course, Mr. Carmen is correct, and that is allowed to record a zoning commitment that limits the use. Rezone is discretionary, and you can add those restrictions. Basically, what you're doing is adding, it's a very smaller scale, little tiny PUD restriction, because now we have to track that into the future. It's no longer just the zoning designation that is listed for the parcel. It has special restrictions that other parcels in the city with the same zoning designation do not. I do think in the past it has been accurate, as Mr. Carmen said, that that's something we've commonly done. I can say in the last few years we haven't done that very much because of the tracking issue. We just reestablished all of these zoning districts, so we would prefer that they be used in their, that the whole cloth of each is what would be used. We understand that some people may not think some are entirely appropriate, so it will be up to you all and council to decide. You can do that. Just from an administration and kind of fairness across the board for all properties that have a zoning designation, we kind of prefer to shy away from that. If this property is, unique enough that we think that's necessary, of course you can explore that. And I would also like to, I'll throw it to Eric in a second, but to chime in on Mr. Carmen's comment about not wanting to create split zone lots. Yes, we do not want to create split zone lots. That isn't easy for administration. And as he mentioned, they could easily, if they wanted to have lots with more than one zone, do a subdivision first and create those and then zone them however they'd like, instead of asking for the zoning first and then having the subdivision trail if it works out. Yes, we do not prefer that. And actually part of the zoning map update that we're undergoing is getting rid of all of our existing split zone lots because they create administration problems for us and for the property owners. Eric, do you want to speak to the MC issue?
Yeah, but I also wanted to just kind of point out that what is unique about this site, and certainly something to keep in mind, is the large size of it. It's 87 acres, and it's a unique location on the interstate. There aren't many properties, or there aren't any other properties, vacant properties in Bloomington, with this ideal location that really are well suited for business park, more industrial uses. This is not where we want commercial, high intensity commercial uses. It's not necessarily really where we want multifamily uses. So when the site plan was approved for this and the petitioner gave, and so hopefully you can see this on the screen now, this is the overall grading plan. So what was kind of envisioned for this property with the sensitive environmental features was a set of uses that really gravitate more towards taller buildings, not one-story retail buildings, which is what you typically find in the MC district, but more taller buildings, parking, keep things up along the street, maximize the preservation on the site that's necessary. So those are other things to really kind of keep in mind as in terms of what this should be zoned. The mixed use commercial district has big box retail, medium retail, the vehicle uses, car washes, truck stops. Those are not necessarily the things that are appropriate at this location. As Mike kind of pointed out, those are some of the differences between the MC and the ME district. Certainly it's something that we can also continue to discuss as we look at amending these districts if there aren't other uses that might be appropriate. So that was some of the reasoning behind that MC versus the ME district. And, obviously the matching of the comprehensive plan. So, there is a different designation within the comprehensive plan for areas where we want commercial.
Okay, thank you. It's one thing to think about pre-pandemic tall office buildings that are a bunch of office space and wanting that there. It's hard to think about that now. I get the manufacturing, but it's hard to envision someone developing a employment center with tall office buildings in this day and age, maybe for the near future. But I appreciate all those, all that added information from both you and Ms. Scanlon. Thanks.
And also just point out, if you just look right up the street here, Southern Indiana Medical Park, it's a large professional office medical complex. Just across the street from that, you've got Hoosier Energy and their corporate headquarters, which is an ideal location. These types of uses draw from a wide crowd, not just people in Bloomington, but people that live along the I-69 corridor. So the location here and the uniqueness of that is certainly something that helps lend itself more towards keeping this as an employment use property.
Okay. Are there other questions from commissioners? I see Chris Cockrum.
Jackie and Eric, as an alternative to what Mike Carmen suggested as the deed restrictions, what are your thoughts of adding or amending the PUD and adding uses that we feel might be appropriate or that might work well with the petitioner?
Well, so that's one of the things that I briefly kind of mentioned that we are trying to get away from are these PUDs, especially PUDs that match current zoning districts. One of the problems that I mentioned with this PUD was that it was approved under the 1973 zoning code, and those lists of uses are so very different than what we've got in the current code and how they're defined. And it's just a nightmare to try to match up. And a lot of those uses in the 73 code didn't even have definitions. They're just very broad statements that could be something completely different now. So we're really trying to get away from these vintage ancient PUDs and rezone these to current districts. Our current code now is a lot more up to date. A lot of things have changed in the past 40, 50 years between 1973 and now. So no, we certainly don't want to perpetuate the PUD. We would like to rezone it to something that's on the books now.
All right, other questions? Let's go to Commissioner Sandberg.
Thank you. I know the petitioner had mentioned a few things. I'm sure they cannot be specific about maybe who has approached them for possibly being in this development, should they be successful in getting this change. Could I ask them to just kind of give a general overview of what the intent might be? I think I heard something about assisted living centers. Did I hear something about hotel, restaurant? Again, I know you can't be specific, but to the extent that you can be, since you're asking us for some feedback, could we get a better idea of what the plan may be?
Sure. This is Mike Carmen. The assisted living was not intended to be a representation that we have somebody looking to do that. The PUD was amended some years ago to add assisted living as one of the permitted use in PUD. We don't want to lose that. The ME zone does not include assisted living as a permitted use. The MC zone does. So one of the issues of going to the MC zone would be to preserve the assisted living as a possible use, because we do think that is actually one of the very likely developments out there at some point. It hasn't happened yet. You look up at North Park and what's going on there, the regional hospital, essentially assisted living, a retirement center up there. It's, I look at this as being fairly comparable to that, and I would think this could easily be a target area for assisted living center at some point. It's just not happened yet. So that was an idea of not wanting to lose that permitted use. The what else do you say? Oh, the training center. So one of the inquiries we've had would be a very large center that basically is beyond in much detail, I call it a training center, a resource center for safety training and handling of certain emergency functions. And it's not just training local police. That's why I refer to it as a regional center. And that's why they need they're looking to have a hotel closely associated with it, within walking distance of that center, as opposed to people coming in to attend the courses and do the work and have to drive someplace for lodging. So look for an on-site hotel and restaurant that would be paired with that potential use if it happens. And it's not going to be a fast thing. The time frame we've been told that if it happens, it could easily be 2 years. It's not a tomorrow event, no. But in terms of getting set up to make sure that could happen, should develop, yes, now would seem to be the time to do that. I know Ms. Kinsey had some questions too. I wanted to make some further comments after yours, but I think we should probably go back to Brad, to other people who had comments or questions. I saw another hand raised a moment ago.
Yeah, let's go to Commissioner Kinsey.
Thanks. I wondered about some of the improvements that have been made to this area since I-69 came through, and kind of what's going on. I wonder if there is anything noteworthy about the advancements in terms of traffic flow and access, if it's safer, if, I'm trying to get an understanding of how much this whole area has changed since the highway came through. Eric, is there an easy summary of that, or Petitioner perhaps has made? Yeah, Petitioner, I'd take your sense of that too.
Well, I guess I'll try and answer it in part, because part of the I-69 has produced a roundabout there that would be the entrance to this property, would be coming off the roundabout. So from a traffic flow concern of a traffic light or whatever, would be coming off of the roundabout. In terms of other improvements, it's underway. I mean, the MC zone talks about quarter being a quarter. Fulton Pike now coming into town and connecting to South Walnut or Old 37 when you get finally into town is a work in progress. The county is handling most of that, but it is on its way to being developed as a quarter. That stretch of Fulton coming off of 69, I forget the distance. I believe the final plan for the county was for 3 lanes, so there'd be a left turn stacking lane as part of that. Original plans had it being 4-lane road, and there's some pushback by a local neighborhood about proximity to some of the houses already built there, and so they've narrowed it to a 3-lane with a center stacking lane for left turns. So that is underway and a work in progress to be a true quarter road coming from 69 all the way into Old 37, the south part of town. Other than that, I'm not aware of any other changes or developments. Other than I would repeat briefly the comment that, and I understand what Eric's saying about this being ideal with I-69. I just don't see how that's any different than it was ideal with 37. We put an I-69 on top of a State Road 37 designation, and it's the same situation. The principal highway connector quarter road at this site has been true for a number of years, and that by itself has not generated the interest in employment-based zoning and development. And I don't see that calling it I-69 changes that at all.
All right. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Sorry, I said something before I put my hand up. I apologize.
Okay.
I just want to understand what the options are here from staff. So we either stick with ME fully, and this is denied and it's a negative recommendation. And so then what goes there are the conditions under the ME, which are the employment related, or we go completely the other way. That's the other option, and say it's okay to have it MC, in which case the petitioner can put whatever falls under the MC, including apparently like a truck stop or a car wash or vehicle sales, what's written in your report here. Or we could do the hybrid. We're allowed to do that, which is recommended. No, wait. Yes, recommended, but there are certain things in there, like we don't want a truck stop. I'm just going to say, let's say that. We don't want a truck stop and we don't want this, but a hotel's okay and a restaurant's okay and other employment is okay, but we don't want these other things. Are those the three options then?
Yeah, so they're requesting a very specific thing, right? And you are either recommending approval or denial of that request. So they're requesting MC. You are either recommending, yes, we think it should be MC, or no, we do not think it should be MC. And then if you are recommending, yes, we think it should be MC, you can add conditions, including the zoning commitment that limits use.
Okay, great. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
But I just want to point out that the petitioner has withdrawn the request for a second hearing.
correct.
So technically, you know, this would need to go to a second hearing, or if you feel comfortable denying it now, then, you know, either you would make a motion to recommend adoption of staff's proposed findings and send this to the Common Council with a negative recommendation, or you continue it the next month, see what the petitioner revises, you know, based on any feedback you guys might give them.
Yeah, they don't have to recommend. They don't have to recommend waiver of second hearing for you to waive a second hearing. I'm not sure. Mike could weigh in on that, but either way, I believe that by asking to waive it here at this hearing, you could still honor their original request. But I don't think we're in any hurry ourselves. I just to clarify that. Yeah, if you all want more time to think about it or consider, have them submit, you know, more proposed information about some sort of self-regulation, then yes, moving it on would be appropriate. Sorry, Brad.
That's all right. I guess I wanted to just ask Eric to just take the example that Mr. Carmen gave us of this hypothetical training center with an attached or adjacent hotel and full-scale restaurant. Is a two-part question. One, do you see that as being incompatible with the area or with the comprehensive plan? And if not, how would what would staff's preference be for accommodating something like that, which is sort of somewhere in between the ME and the MC?
Yep. So the request, you know, to have some kind of a training facility, you know, just looking at this in generalities, could certainly be classified as either a building, trade, or school, which is a permitted use in the ME district, or it could also be looked at as an office, which is also a permitted use in the ME district. As well, hotels are listed as a conditional use in the ME district, so that is still something that could be done on the site. So the things that the petitioner mentioned or you just asked about would all be either permitted or allowed with a conditional use request.
But those would require that the petitioner then receive some additional approval in order to get that done. They couldn't do that by right in the ME district.
Well, if it's over 30,000, you know, if it hits one of the triggers for major site plan approval, then it would just need to go to the Plan Commission for site plan approval.
Okay, and I guess follow-up question then for Mr. Carmen. Is that exceedingly burdensome? Does that really limit I guess maybe just give us a sense of how does that really limit the marketability then if you've got things that are conditional approval versus things that are, permitted by right?
By itself, the conditional approval versus a permitted use, for the most part, is generally not an obstacle. You can usually, whatever the conditions are that are inherent in the conditional use, usually are reasonable, or I'll go on a limb and say generally a reasonable site plan type issues, and whether it's how you do your parking, how you do your access, and some other things. So those are all doable. That's not the problem. The restaurant use is a little bit of a problem. The restaurant use in an ME is limited on size. In fact, when you read the description of what the restaurant anticipated in the ME zone, to me sounds like it's not much more than a fast food arrangement. It's very limited capacity, and so the restaurant would be an issue. But the issue of the MC is not just the hotel without being conditional use, the restaurant being larger and more full scale, is also some other flexibility because employment type uses only have not generated any interest out there in 36 years, 34 years. So that's, and I don't know if it's an issue, and I don't want to belabor the point, just, you know, it's not the first time I've had a staff talk about the problem of tracking conditions like the zoning commitment, even though they are used a lot. I actually get that same comment in some county work of the same issue. They're concerned about trying to track that and losing track of it. All I can tell you is it is for the most part self-policing. I mean, every subdivision anymore has a booklet of covenants, conditions, restrictions. I mean, property owners are getting used to tracking that there are restricted uses on almost everything that's purchased anymore. But more than that is something like this never happens without major financing, without that, which leads to title insurance. And I keep a title insurance license, and for all the clothes we handle, I've never had a project of even coming close to in size what anything on here would be that the lender did not require a zoning endorsement to the title work for the loan policy, which means we had to track down what all the permitted uses were in that zone, verify and ensure the zoning classification for that lender before they'll make the construction loan. So, I mean, the issue of losing track of these things, to me, is just not an issue. It's in the records, it's in the deeds, and there are interested parties out there that track these things because it means it's important to them. So that by itself, I would not agree as a concern. But yeah, and I want to clarify also, I hope I didn't misspeak, Jackie, but we in our petition statement requested waiver second meeting. So that waiver, so what I was asking is to withdraw that or notify that we are withdrawing that request as to allow to go to the next meeting. So
Yeah, so my understanding is, I could be wrong, that's why I was saying, there's a time limit on that. So for example, even just filing a petition, if you're then asking to continue it, that's what I was thinking it was related to. So that's why I said I wasn't sure. We could check with Mike if they had issue. I don't think there will be an issue. And yes, of course, a zoning commitment, it goes with title. We don't have people's titles in the office when a property goes up for sale and interested parties are calling in and requesting and asking about them, and we look up that it's a zoning district. Unless we are also tracking it, we could be giving false information, saying, oh yes, it's zoned MC, here is the use list, and people make decisions based on the information they get from us. So we obviously try to make it as accurate as possible. And of course, at some point it would come out, but we would just prefer that it would be as clean as possible from the beginning.
All right. Thank you for that. I guess one final question for Mr. Carmen. Obviously, your preference would be to see this move forward as MC, but given the option between moving forward with a rezone to ME now or having it stay with the PUD until the new maps are adopted, what would be your preference?
Petitioner's preference would be to have this continued to next month, your next meeting. Give us an opportunity to look at those issues, including what we could do with if we want to we stay with the MC requested MC zoning, what we can do to address some of the concerns, primarily the permitted uses, to eliminate that. And I'll look again at the issue of the split zone, even a subdivision. The problem I have with the just planning to do a 2-lot subdivision now and designate, one half or whatever it is ME and one part of it is MC. If something like that would fly, is that guarantees a further subdivision. Have to go through it again when you get down to a specific user, because we can't configure size and lot at this point. It'd be a big broad brush approach of some major designation for the 2 different zones if we go that route. So there's a lot involved in that. And so the issue is to find some more time to consider some of those things and reaffirm exactly what we're looking for in the way of the zoning petition and do that at your next meeting.
Okay, let's go to Jillian. Looks like she's got one more question.
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. This is probably the question I should have asked when I asked about the timeline for the rezone, because it makes me wonder what the process or likelihood of any considerations in the rezone process that we're going to get underway in January is for something to be considered, or for other parcels in this area to be reconsidered for its designation. If it's currently listed as an ME, what would be the condition under which we might consider a rezone for when we're approving these? Is there an option to do that, or is that not likely in the future meetings?
So are you asking if, in that scenario, would you be assuming that the petitioner's request would be denied and we would rezone it to ME, and then at some point in the future, they wanted to come back and rezone it?
Yes.
It's the same process, or the same kind of criteria, that we listed in the staff report, review with the comprehensive plan. That's obviously the first step. So somebody always has the right to come back and request a rezone.
Mm-hmm.
That never goes away. And the criteria that they would be evaluated on are the 6 things that I've listed there under the zoning map amendment in the staff report. The comprehensive plan, current conditions, most desirable use for the land, sensitive features, conservation of property value, and responsible development and growth.
Okay, I guess I'm trying to understand what options there are to do this as part of a broader consideration in January. The challenge that I think, well, I'll just say the challenge that I'm having here today is that it would be nice to consider this in, given all the work we did on the comprehensive plan, to consider this and the UDO to really consider it in the rezone process, along with other parcels, to see if perhaps this deserves some reconsideration. And I think that's the hard part here is, where I understand we're trying to address a petitioner's concern now, but it would be nice to have something a little more grounded to make our decision on. And I don't see that necessarily in the petitioner's request, which is why I think I'm hearing the petitioner indicate a willingness to go to a second hearing. But I also don't, I would like to more fully understand kind of what the options are for us to reconsider any of that rezone.
Let me take a crack at it. Whoa.
Thanks.
And see if this helps. And it might not. So we are doing the larger rezone, and just any property owner in town, including this property here, can at that time during that process come to the public meetings for both you and council and say, hey, I have a property. I think that the proposal is wrong and here's why. And then someone can take that up and propose an amendment. I'm sorry, not at council. Council gets the map and they're a yay or nay. So it would be here at Plan Commission where a property owner could say, could bring to your attention that they thought something was wrong and why, and that they wanted it to be a different zone. And that would be possible. If this property owner or any property owner has a zone that they don't like, or goes through a zoning process that then they change their mind about or something before the larger map goes through, then they could still appeal to you to amend what we propose. And I mean, they could appeal to us too as well before, when we put the maps out. We have gotten contact now. Obviously we're getting contact about a lot of larger issues, but we've also gotten small contacts from property owners, 1 or 2 property owners who want something changed, and then had that discussion with them and decide one way or the other. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. That's
okay.
That's helpful. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
Yes, my question is, what is the staff trying to avoid that will be built in that area that you're trying to avoid? I'm trying to give Mr. Carmen some ideas to pursue for the next meeting. So.
Well, the uses that we are avoiding would be those that would be low employment uses. So the comprehensive plan encourages uses here that have high number of employees, you know, that are not promoting a one-story building that, you know, generates. And like I said, it really goes back to the location of this, right on I-69. I know that it's not that much different than 37, but there is more traffic on there. You know, access was specifically given right to this property, which makes it ideal for uses that have a lot of traffic coming and going. So it's not really necessarily uses we're trying to avoid. I mean, certainly there are uses we don't think that are appropriate here that we don't want. You know, like the car washes and the truck stops and things like that. But, you know, what we do want is high employment generating uses.
And I'll add to that, sorry, that it is very much the same road, but there are a lot of differences. It does have a higher use. It connects to much different places than it did before. And that will only, as Section 6 gets done, as it moves on past Indianapolis, I mean, that's only going to increase. So some of the uses that Eric mentions, like a truck stop or other car maintenance uses that maybe wouldn't necessarily be useful for those in the community, could be useful for those using the highway. And some of those can only come in through MC.
It looks like Mr. Robinson might want to have something to say there.
Thank you, Commissioner Whistler. This is Scott Robinson, Director of Planning and Transportation. I do want to provide maybe a little context for some background on this. You know, when staff was working on updating the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, we did coordinate with Monroe County and other folks along the I-69 corridor. One group that we did coordinate with was Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, BEDC. They have consistently been concerned about the erosion of, you know, lack of employment uses and being encouraged with that. And that's one area I want to be sensitive to and point that out. I don't see them on the meeting tonight, but I do know that they have reached out to us in interest to discuss that. They've reviewed the draft map and raised initial concerns about changing the employment to the mixed use employment. So again, I just want to raise that as a point of input that I have received at this point in time. So I just want to offer that up for discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Any other questions? All right, if there are no other questions from commissioners, we can go to public comment. So once again, if you'd like to make public comment on this petition, ZO 23-20, please click on the participants tab and click on the raise hand button. And we will give you 5 minutes to make comment. I'm not seeing any.
Have a couple of chat questions, but I'm going to go ahead and say, I know we do that format for the UDO meetings and also for, I think council does that as well. But Dave, if you want to go ahead, I can unmute you and then you can go ahead and ask your questions. At Plan Commission, they usually hear directly from the petitioner, from the public when there aren't a lot of people. Just a moment.
Sorry, were we?
Yeah,
ready for someone?
Maybe he's not there. I had someone send a chat question. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep.
There we go.
Are.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I have to reconfigure things so that I can talk as opposed to just record. Hang on one second.
Sorry. Thank you.
I appreciate your patience. 1 second.
Sure. Whenever you're ready, please just go ahead and state your name for the record, and then you'll have 5 minutes.
This is Dave Askins with B Square Beacon. Just 2 questions, and I understand that there's no obligation that the questions get answered, but I figured I would float them out there just in case. Question 1 is, can someone confirm that from a legal point of view, this could still go to the City Council for consideration, even if the Plan Commission were eventually to recommend denial? And question 2 is, in whatever shape this goes to the city council, would the city council be able to, on its own initiative, add the kind of zoning commitment that Mr. Carmen described? Or would the city council have to live with the proposal in whatever condition it's been recommended, possibly for denial, by the Plan Commission? So I think we're accustomed to seeing the city council add reasonable conditions to a PUD. So I'm wondering if zoning commitments could be added by the city council at that stage in the same manner that reasonable conditions are added to a PUD. Those are the 2 questions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to make comment on ZO 23-20? Jackie, do you see anyone else? Okay, we'll come back to the commission then, and I'll just go ahead and kind of follow up on that question. I believe that, can you confirm, Jackie, our role right in this particular matter is advisory. We're going to forward to the council with a recommendation, but ultimately it is up to them. They don't have to follow our recommendation.
Correct.
If they want to reverse it, they have that authority. Correct?
Yes, so if this body recommends denial of something, council can approve it. If you all recommend approval of something, they can deny it. The second question about whether how they can add whether or not they can add conditions is a little we're a little unclear about that, because as Mr. Askins pointed out, most of the things that go to council in the past with conditions, or that most of the things that go to council in the past related to rezones are PUDs. And they do have the power under state law to do the reasonable conditions. I'm not quite sure how that applies to rezones. We're looking into it, but we can, if this were to be continued, we can let you know next time, of course.
Typically what they've done with any reasonable conditions is had the petitioner address those with a zoning commitment. Otherwise that condition will kind of get lost.
Right, but reasonable conditions are specific to PUDs. So the question is, can you do something similar on a rezone only that's not a PUD? And I'm not sure. I didn't know, Eric, if you might know the answer to that question as well. Mr. Rooker is the city attorney, and he is looking into it, but we don't have it explicitly stated one way or the other in our rules.
Yeah, Michael Rooker, city attorney, just to address that question. It's not clear to me, and I apologize that I don't know the answer on the fly here. The UDO is still, in our world, a relatively new document. So we do need a little bit of time to clarify how it works for a rezone request.
Okay, thank you. We are back to the commission here, and I think this would be the appropriate time for a motion. We have a few options here. We could follow the staff's recommendation to go ahead and forward this with a negative recommendation. Or we could certainly forward this to another hearing, as seems to be the petitioner's preference at this point. But I think either one of those would require a motion. So I would entertain a motion at this time.
The motion would be for both proposals, Commissioner Whistler, or one by one?
No, I think we need one or the other. We either need to move this along to the council with a recommendation, which could be positive or negative. The staff's recommendation was that it be a negative recommendation, or alternatively, we could just continue this to our next meeting for another hearing.
So just for clarification, if it goes right now to the council, would be endorsing the negative, you're saying?
It depends. I mean, we can entertain a motion either way. We could move to forward this with a positive recommendation. We could move to forward this with a negative recommendation. We could move to forward this with no recommendation, or as I said, we could just continue this to another hearing at our December meeting without forwarding it to the council at this time. So I think I see Commissioner Sandberg would like to make a motion.
Yes, given the questions and given the petitioner's preference here, I would prefer that we move this toward the December meeting for a second hearing.
I second that.
All right, so the motion is to forward this to a second hearing at the December meeting. That's been seconded. Is there any final comment on that motion before we call the roll?
And I'm inclined to do that as well because it came at the request of the petitioner. I guess I'm curious if we've provided sufficient information or if the petitioner expects to provide new information so that we don't have this identical conversation in December. So that would be the only thing. I don't want to waste people's time, but I hope that we present some new information either to the petitioner or that the petitioner brings some new information forward if we're going to continue this. But I think right now I'm doing it under faith that the petitioner has made this request and it's worth considering.
I think we may also get some additional information from staff and from legal between now and the next meeting. There seems to be, some desire to find compromise here, and we're not entirely sure what our options are, and so hopefully we'll get a slightly clearer picture by the next meeting as to what the best path forward is. Any other comments from commissioners? Yes, Israel, go ahead.
So if there is a question that we would like to send to the petitioner, so it would be through you, Jacqueline, or what's the channel for some questions regarding the next meeting?
Sure, through Eric.
Okay.
Okay, any additional questions or final comments? All right, so the motion again is to forward to a second hearing at our December meeting. Jackie, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Cockrum,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Copper,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
St. John.
Yes.
8-0. Thank you.
Okay, so that is forwarded to the December meeting. Bear with me one moment while I get my agenda in order here. All right, we are ready to move on to our second petition of the evening. This is SPDP-24-20. Habitat for Humanity is the petitioner. The property is located at 700 West Guy Avenue. This is a request for final plan and primary plat approval to allow 69 single-family lots and 7 common area lots. And Eric Grulich is the case manager for this one as well. So we'll kick it back over to him. Take it away, Eric.
Thank you very much, Chris. So this is, as you mentioned, a request from Habitat for Humanity. This is for the property that they just recently received rezoning for on the southwest side of town, just off of South Rogers Street. This 12-acre property lies at the end of Cherokee Drive and Chambers and Duncan and Guy, with the stub of Bernard Drive just to the south of this. So surrounding properties to the east and the south are single-family residential. To the north, you have land within the Thompson Planned Unit Development. And just to the west of this, you have the RCA Community Park. So the petitioner is kind of following up on their rezoning approval that expanded the Thompson PUD to include this site. So they are requesting final plan approval for the 69 single-family lots and 7 common area lots, as well as approval of their primary plat. So as I mentioned, this was an expansion of the Thompson PUD. So you can see the overall PUD, and then this property outlined is in the southeast corner of that. The Thompson PUD was expanded to allow for Habitat to redevelop this property with these single-family lots. The site is undeveloped. You can see some of the adjacent uses, single family to the south and the east, and then the vacant land to the north. Just to the north of this is the Duke Energy easement, which I mentioned previously in the last hearings, that extends from Rogers Street to the east to Weimer Road. The Parks Department is going to be installing a multi-use path through this corridor. The petitioners will be making a contribution to that project as well. So this received approval to allow for single family and detached single family. Predominantly, these are single family lots. This is very similar to a lot of the other habitat projects that focus on affordable housing. The lot sizes range from 3,500 to 3,300 square feet. These are all owner-occupied houses. There will be public street extensions of all of these stub streets to the east of this that I mentioned. They'd be extending through the site, as well as connecting to Bernard Drive to the south, with a road stub to the north as well, just to provide any possible connectivity as land to the north might develop in the future. So nothing has changed really from the site plan that the Planning Commission is seeing here today versus what was approved just a few months ago. As I mentioned, all of the internal roads are public. You've got single family housing coming off of all of those streets, frontage on all of those streets. 57% of these lots are alley served, kind of following the traditional subdivision layout, which places an emphasis on alley loaded lots. So the petitioners have shown that. There would be public streets along the front with on-street parking spaces, as well as there would be parking spaces off of the alleys just behind the structures. So there is a proposed phasing that the petitioner is showing here. You can see that with kind of the blue line that runs down the center. So phase one would be the eastern half. Phase two would be the southern half. There were also specific cross sections that were shown with this. That generally follow what is approved with the transportation plan. There was a deviation that the Planning Commission did approve for the streets that will not have on-street parking. So a 40-foot right-of-way was approved for that, those streets. And those, like I said, those would be the streets that do not have on-street parallel spaces. So as I mentioned, nothing's really changing with this petition. It meets all of the setbacks that were approved with this PUD amendment and the district ordinance that was approved. There was a reduction for the rear yard setback, reduction for the lot width and lot size that was approved, as well as a deviation for the minimum number of lots served by an alley. So the petitioner did submit several elevations for the buildings within here, kind of showing a mix of front porches and styles. These are the lots that are along that interior trail. There's an interior multi-use trail that connects to the RCA park just to the west of this and stubs throughout the development. There will be sidewalks constructed along all of the internal streets. So again, some of those elevations of the single family residences, petitioner has shown a variety of porch types that I kind of mentioned in fronts to give us some diversity for the housing types within this development. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the final plan and the primary plat with the 5 conditions that are listed on staff's report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to make a presentation? I think I see a hand waving there.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. My name is Nathan Ferreira. I'm the Director of Land Development and Production for Habitat for Humanity of Monroe County. And thanks for having us tonight, Eric. Thanks for the thorough overview. I'll just touch on a few more things and then happy to answer questions. The mission of Habitat for Humanity is to eliminate poverty housing by building decent, affordable homes in partnership with qualifying families. Our vision is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. Founded locally in 1988, we've housed nearly 800 people. More than half of them are children, and we are wrapping up our 211th home right now. Low-income families qualify on 3 basic criteria: the need for housing, ability to pay, willingness to partner. And each adult in the family contributes 250 hours of volunteering called sweat equity and participates in home ownership classes. Osage Place will be Habitat's 3rd Bloomington neighborhood. As city land suitable for residential becomes more scarce, there's a growing need for affordable housing in proximity to jobs and services. Our comprehensive plan and the recent housing study both call for increased density on undeveloped land. This 12.5 acres where Osage will be built will allow for 69 units. These homes will be built out over the next 7 to 8 years. We plan to begin phase 1 infrastructure next spring and begin building our first houses by September of 2021. And just a quick correction, phase 1 is the western half, the first 30 houses, and phase 2 would be the remaining houses, the eastern part of the neighborhood. We have an agreement with the city to keep half of the houses affordable for 30 years. When a Habitat homeowner decides to sell their home back, Habitat has the first right of refusal to buy back that house for the life of the loan and house another low-income family. The 30-year affordability period means that we will ensure that low-income households own the home for that period, regardless of how many times we have to buy back that house to make that happen. Osage will create road connectivity to the Thompson property to the north, one of the largest undeveloped remaining tracts of land in the city, and it'll provide incredible access to the residents. It's within proximity to jobs, good services, several city amenities. Eric mentioned the multi-use trail connecting to RCA Park. We've also had an agreement with the Parks Department to contribute $40,000 to the construction of the trail to the north, the east-west trail that will connect the neighborhood to Switchyard to the east and eventually extend beyond RCA Park to the west. With Osage Community, Habitat will begin building to a higher energy standard than what we currently build. Zero energy homes means that homes will be Energy Star certified, part of the Air Plus program, and wired for solar installation, so that homeowners, when they decide to potentially take that step, everything is ready for them to go solar. So we believe Osage Place checks all the boxes for a new neighborhood in our community. It's affordable, density, energy efficiency, and connectivity. So we're excited to get started, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners, either for staff or for the petitioner? All right, there's one. Let's go to Jillian.
All right, I appreciate the mention of energy efficiency. Can you be a little bit more specific about what the anything new from the last time that we heard this petition, or more specific?
It's the same standard that we discussed last time. Essentially, zero energy. That certification means that when a family decides to have on-site energy production, they should be able to generate as much energy as they are using. That's what zero energy means. The Energy Star standard for us primarily means building a really tight envelope for the house so that energy is retained, and then the Air Plus program as well. So really the newest part for us will be wiring the homes for solar. Mm-hmm. And our home is that the local Solar for All program that serves low-income families to help get them solar, that they would be able to step right into that program.
Thank you.
Sure.
Excellent.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. All right, we will then go to public comment. If you are here to give public comment, please click on that participants tab, click on the raise hand button, and we will unmute you and recognize you to give your public comment. If at that time when you are recognized, just state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to give your comment. haven't seen any.
See any. Oh, there we have
I
one.
do see
Yep.
an actual hand
Yeah.
being raised there, not a virtual hand.
You should be, we should be able to hear you, Chad.
Okay, can you hear me?
We got you.
All right, my name is Chad Roeder. I'm a resident of the adjacent Suzie Street Evergreen Village property, and we completely support the green lighting this project. It seems like a real benefit to the community, but our primary concern is with stormwater runoff. We've had some issues in the past with some flooding in our neighborhood, and the city has in the past, maybe 10 years ago, contributed to the expansion of the creek that runs adjacent to our neighborhood, which receives a lot of stormwater runoff. So I just want to put that out there as a matter of public record that that's our primary concern with this project. We have met with the city utilities department. We're in an ongoing dialogue, and we're also looking at grants available for mitigating stormwater runoff in our neighborhood, and our sort of responsibility as a neighborhood to meet those challenges. But I think that in general, beyond the habitat, the Osage project, this is going to be an ongoing issue that needs to be addressed one way or another over the coming years. And I hope that that this project in particular will help trigger that dialogue moving forward. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any other?
Yeah, we have
Public
Sharon
comments?
has a question, I think, or comment. Sharon, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm also a resident in the Evergreen community that's adjacent to the Habitat community. And from what I understand, the Habitat community is planning on dispensing their stormwater into a detention pond that we in the Evergreen community are responsible to maintain. And it has problems that need to be addressed that are very expensive. And that's why we're looking into grants. But we are concerned that, from what I understand from Bloomington Utilities, that the Habitat community is planning on releasing water into that detention pond that already has issues. So I would like to ask if the people who are involved with Habitat here today are aware of the flooding issues in the Evergreen community, and if they're taking that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? If not, we'll come back to the commission, and I'll just go ahead and pose the first question. If staff might just offer up a little more context on the drainage plan there, on I guess specifically if there is stormwater draining from this proposed development to the Evergreen area, and if so, what the plans are to mitigate that.
Sure, I can briefly speak to that, and the petitioner can step in with anything I'm missing. So there are three common area lots on this petition that will be handling stormwater. So the utilities department will be reviewing this as part of their grading permit. One of the requirements that they have is that their post-development runoff rate cannot exceed their pre-development runoff rate. So they have to capture and mitigate all of the stormwater runoff on the site and control that before it leaves the property. So the petitioners will be meeting that requirement, and the utilities department will be reviewing it. So this project should not result in any increase of stormwater flow rates leaving the site from its current conditions.
Thank you. Anything the petitioner would like to add to that?
No, thanks.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners or a motion?
Motion.
Yeah. Just as a reminder, the staff recommendation was
Oh,
that.
I'm so sorry, Brad. I'm sorry to interrupt. I got a message
Sure.
from someone who's having trouble raising their hand.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to see if they want to unmute. Just a second. Aldana, are you there?
Yes, Jacqueline. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
This is Aldona Reed, and I'm so sorry, not technologically savvy as far as raising my hand, even though you gave great instructions at the beginning. We have the exact same concern that the other two folks mentioned. We're very supportive of the Osage Place and looking forward to seeing more homes being built behind us. But we also have had flooding issues coming off of that property, even without any development there. So again, just wanted to go on record saying that also is our concern, because we are much lower than the said property. Otherwise, Habitat, you're amazing, and thank you for doing all the great things you do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I believe now we are back to the commission, and I see Commissioner Sandberg. Did you have a question or?
I just have a comment before we go to a motion. I do appreciate all the public who are reminding us of the evergreen problems, because I can recall that it was just shortly after that development was built, they had ongoing problems with flooding. And so if they are continuing to have those problems, which I'm, hearing now for the first time in a while, thinking about the evergreen development, I would absolutely hope that we can do more than just break even here, that we make sure that nothing from this project does in any way contribute to what may be going on there, or maybe even do some things that might ameliorate that. I just recall how devastating that was to see the photos of what was going on. And again, that was some time ago. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I see. Let's go to Commissioner Enright.
Yes, and I just kind of, I guess, want a little clarification. I'm reviewing this. I guess it was stated that there's going to be off-site bioretention. Is that actually part of the plan, that they are going to utilize bioretention off-site?
No, they're not utilizing bioretention. This site is located upstream of the evergreen, so the water will flow in that direction. But like I said, they will be required to capture all of what happens, what falls on this property, and ensure that the runoff rate doesn't exceed what the current rate is, to exacerbate any problems downstream.
Okay, and that's what I thought, and I just wanted to kind of address that point that was made and clarify it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or a motion? As a reminder, the staff recommendation was to approve the final plan and primary plat with 5 conditions. I'll go ahead and read those now, just to be sure that everyone understands. The number 1 is approved per terms and conditions of Plan Commission Case PUD 10-20. Number 2 is that the interior sidewalks and tree plots for the streets shown with 60 feet of right-of-way must be widened to be consistent with the Transportation Plan and Plan Commission approval with the final plat. Number 3 is that all common area lots must be listed as common area lots and identified as not buildable lots of record. Number 4, that the final details regarding the details of the off-site multi-use path along the north end of the property must be resolved with the Parks Department prior to issuance of a grading permit. And number 5, that all easements must be listed and defined on the final plat. So that is the staff recommendation. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Kinsey.
Yes, I'll motion to approve the final plan and the primary plat with the 5 conditions that you just specified, SPDP 2420, Habitat for Humanity.
Second.
All right. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any final comments before we call the roll? All right. Looks like we're ready for the roll call. Jackie?
Great. Whistler,
Yes.
Copper,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
and Cockrum.
Yes.
That's 8-0.
All right, that motion passes 8-0. And that is our final petition for the evening. And thank you for all for being with us. We are adjourned. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you in
everyone.
December.
So much.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.